Welcome back everyone. Today we'll recap a 2022 Turkish horror film named Mahlûkat. Before we start, it is a request to please like and comment on the video as it will help us to grow our reach. The movie begins by showing the Mercy village of Mardin. A man named Araf tries to send 2 jinns to hell. But then he comes out of the house and we hear those jinns laughing. After this, we see his sister Zara, who sees something in the fire. After which she becomes possessed. He goes to a house where he finds Zara and he picks her up and takes her to the upper room. Meanwhile, an old man named Boran passes by that house when he sees Araf in the window. But then the 2 jinns tell him that he cannot see. We then see Boran's wife Nazare sleeping in her room. When she hears some sound and sees that her slippers are moving towards her, she gets scared and tries to wake up her sister Sabahat. But then she sees that her slippers are missing, and then suddenly her blanket covers her. Sabahat comes there hearing her scream and asks what happened, to which she says she doesn't know. He tried to wake her up, but Sabahat says she was inside. She then asked her to bring her pills and sees that her slippers were there only. Meanwhile, we see Zara talking to herself saying she needs to tell him everything. Then a scorpion starts coming towards her and she catches and eats it. On the other hand, we see Araf continuously saying he couldn't be there for her. He then hears her daughter Hill saying he will suffer so much for what he did. She asks him to not leave her alone and that he couldn't be there for them. He then sees blood dripping on the floor, and suddenly her daughter's ghost appears and says he was not there for them. She shows him a necklace he got for her, and then he remembers giving that necklace to her daughter. She then asks him if he remembers how she died, and then she disappears, but he finds the necklace there. Here Boran returns home, and we see Nazare telling him to come to her. He sits beside her, and she asks him why did their son die. Then suddenly she gets up and says his dark and cursed business killed him. Boran says Suet died in an accident, but she says she didn't die in an accident. He drove the car towards the dam and killed himself. He is coming to her dreams every night and tells her he died because of his father. Boran says they will entrust themselves to God. She then says why doesn't Suet's bride talk to him? Because she is afraid he will infect her with darkness at the mountain. His grandchild is suffering and after her father died she doesn't want to live. His punishment is inflicted on his bloodline, and he is bringing an end to his bloodline slowly. She lies down again, and Boran tells Sabahat that he is going to his room to do some work. We then see Suet's wife, who calls her dad and daughter Ija for dinner, and they say they will be there in a minute. Ija then goes to the washroom to wash her hands and face. When she hears her mother's demonic voice laughing and calling her name, she says look, her father is here, and Ija gets terrified hearing this. She leaves the tap open and comes out of the washroom, where she sees her mother killing her father, and she starts screaming in terror. Suddenly her mother's ghost haunts her and disappears, and her mother and grandpa try to calm her down and bring her back to her senses. Meanwhile, we see Araf crying for her daughter. He asks her to open her eyes as he can't live without his family. He asks God why don't he take his life and why he is doing this to him. On the other hand, Boran is reading a book when Suet's ghost haunts him and says don't do what he is thinking, and asks does he want them to come next to him. He says don't do this to his mother and his daughter. And then Boran leaves there. He goes to Suet's wife's house, but she asks him to get out and stay away from her daughter. We then see Araf comes out with some skeletons and start arranging them, saying he never left her alone and was always there for them. And we see that those skeletons are of rams and he says he won't leave them alone and lies down between them. Now he starts seeing his wife Melek and daughter Hill in them and he says he will never leave them alone. Meanwhile, Ija comes out of the house in a trance state and brings out a mannequin from the basement. She dresses him in her father's clothes and starts talking to him by placing a balloon in place of his head. She actually sees her father in it and says she missed him so much, and she knows he didn't leave her. She asks him not to be mad at her and she doesn't want to live without him. Suddenly the balloon bursts and she screams so loud that she has a fit, and her mother and grandpa comes out to her hearing her scream. On the other hand, Zara feels something strange in her body and strange marks start appearing all over her body. But suddenly everything becomes normal again, and she says he needs to know. Here Araf sees Melek and Hill who instigate him to die by hanging. But when he goes to do so, he starts hearing some voices that stop him from doing it. Only then a chair hits the wall, and he hears Zara saying he needs to learn everything and she needs to tell him everything. She then stops and falls, and Araf comes there and tries to bring her to her senses but she faints. Here Suet's wife is haunted by an entity that paralyzes her body and she sees that Ija is also being possessed by some force. Suddenly that entity disappears and 𝐂𝐃𝐿's mother goes to her and makes her lie on the bed. Meanwhile, Araf says he has no purpose in life and he doesn't know why he is still alive. Hearing this, Zara asks him to kill her too and they can die together. But he says he has no one left but her in this life and asks her to help him keep himself alive. But then she reveals that he killed them both, and he gets shocked to hear this. She says he killed his wife and daughter, and then turned into this. He crippled her as well. That night he came to his wife and said this child is not his and he won't let her fool him any longer. He stabbed her so many times, and then he killed his daughter. She tried to save Hill, but he crippled her. He doesn't remember it because he can't live with the calamity he caused, and that is why he is forgetting everything. He has done something so evil even his mind doesn't let him remember. His brain has been possessed. Araf leaves there knowing all this, but we see Zara creepily smiling. On the other hand, we see Boran looking at 𝐂𝐃𝐿's photo, and he crushes it. We then see Araf trying to kill himself, but he fails and gets frustrated that he can't die. Here Sabahat sees a fly going under Nazare's bed, and when she follows it, we see an entity entering the room, and suddenly Nazare throttles her and says she is having a nightmare and wake up. When she wakes up, Nazare tells her she tried to wake her up but she couldn't. She asks her to bring her pills and tells Boran that she will die. Sabahat asks her not to say that, but now when Sabahat turns, she sees Nazare levitating in a coffin. She gets terrified seeing this, and Boran comes there hearing her scream. But Sabahat sees that Nazare is completely fine and on her bed. Suddenly the phone rings and Boran leaves there. We then see Araf saying he didn't kill them, and suddenly he starts choking. But then he wakes up from sleep and finds himself in an unknown place. He grabs a torch and says he didn't kill them, but only then do his wife and daughter begin haunting him. He then hears Zara calling him, and when he come upstairs, he finds her covered in blood and she shows him a room over there, where he sees himself with his family saying that this child is not his. He then stabs Melek and then kills her daughter too. And when Zara tries to stop him, he stabs her as well. We then see that he is actually seeing this all in his dream and Zara comes there to calm him down. But she doesn't look normal at all. Only then Boran reaches there and Zara senses him, after which she enters Araf's dream and forces him to kill himself and be free. And he starts throttling himself. Zara then comes out, and she sets fire there to stop Boran. But he picks up his bag and goes inside, and frees Araf. We then see Araf saying they showed him that he killed his wife and daughter with his own hands. But Boran asks him not to believe what they show and tell him. He tells him that a dark force trapped him and because he destroyed its family so it's taking revenge. It tricked him and inflicts him with pain from hell. This was his test, so don't let it fool him. He says it will hide its name and then he reveals to him the name of that entity. He then performs a ritual and begins trying to expel that entity from his body. And after a few attempts, the entity comes out. Boran goes to him and asks him to gather his strength and turn his back on evil. He reminds him that he is the fire executioner. He then tells him that an evil harbored his darkness and himself away from him. It was he who allowed the evil to do that. The words he is about to utter will disturb the evil but cause him pain. He then reveals that they are not his family. He has no wife and no daughter. If he had a wife and a daughter, would he have even the smallest proof? Here Araf remembers the necklace that he gave to Hill, but when he checks his pocket, he finds just a piece of stick. Boran says to possess and eliminate him. It made him weak by giving him the biggest pain in the universe, the pain of losing a child. And the only thing it can do to eliminate him was to make him kill himself. Araf asks him how long he has been in this state, to which he says since last night. Araf gets shocked to hear this and says he felt like he was in pain for years. Boran says it gave him hell because last night he made a big mistake. Like many times he did earlier, he was there to help those two innocent bodies, but this was an entity he hadn't seen before. We then see Araf asking the entity to release them, but it says if he wants them to be free, he will have to pick one of them. However, he asks it to release both of them, and when he tries to expel them from those bodies, the girl says her mother is dying and asks him to save her. Boran says it made him believe and put him in a dilemma to save which one, and it took the advantage of the moment to possess his body. A mother and a daughter he didn't know. He saved them, but the entity made him see them as his family. He asks him does he know the girl whose house he stayed in last night, to which he says she said she was his sister. But Boran tells him that his sister died years ago. She is just a poor half-witted girl, a puppet of flesh. Boran says they stopped him from reaching him by threatening him and giving pain to his family. Rumor says in ancient times, those who destroyed the bloodline of the evil ones and the demons were used to be called fire executioners. According to him, these have been his tests, and as he has survived, that's the only explanation that now he is the fire executioner. Araf then goes to a secluded place with that poor girl and tells the entity that it will suffer more than it inflicted and it has no right to cause pain to this body. She suddenly gets up and sits there, and Araf asks, "Who are you and where did you come from?" But she attacks him and says he is no one to give her orders. He again asks her name, but she doesn't give him any direct answer, and only then do the mother and daughter come and stand there. The poor girl tries to scare him and says he can't beat her. Hello then calls him dad and asks him to look into her eyes and not to leave her alone. But Araf remembers Boran saying don't let it fool him again and tells him the name of that entity. He then gets up and gathers his strength, and the entity tries to attack him. But he uses his powers and tries to send back the entity to hell, and finally manages to expel it from their bodies. They all then get up, and Araf thanks to God and give him his gratitude, and the movie ends here. Thanks for watching.